In negotiating, the term "let's split the difference" is unacceptable to today's buyers. It's outdated, it's lazy, it's unprofessional, and it's unreliable. To learn more about how to negotiate with professional buyers, just watch this short video. And welcome to the Sharper Business channel. You should be familiar with the 4 key strategies used in successful negotiation, which are as follows. Number 1, your opening price. Number 2, when your opening price is challenged. Number 3, your lowest and best possible price. And finally, matching the prospect's reduced offer. These are 4 distinct strategies that we're going to look at in greater detail right now. Starting with your opening price. Ideally, your opening price should include a discount element. Whereas if you're looking for £1 for your product or service, ideally it should be priced at perhaps £1.10, enabling you to give a 10% discount for a long-established customer, such as a loyalty discount, but you must justify this discount. It could also be a discount for a new customer. It could be a discount for end of season or end of year. It could be a discount for a new product or indeed for a new territory. But ideally you should aim to have a discount, but then you must justify that discount. Then we go to our asking price, which shall we say is £1. And again, it's a good, healthy idea to justify that price. And you can do so in simple terms by saying to the prospect or the buyer, "Mr. Prospect, our price for this product or service is £1. And can I explain to you how we got to that price? You see, my company has a target of making some 6% net profit each year, which means that for every £1 you spend on my company, we'll be spending some 94 pence on your behalf. And that this is a very good idea to demonstrate to him that your objective is to make a responsible margin and tell him exactly what it is." Then we move on to, there is a good chance that there's potential for further discount, but we're not going to disclose that at this stage. It's possible that with your asking price at £1, that in certain circumstances you may be willing to accept as little as 90 pence under certain circumstances. These circumstances, which will be demonstrated later on in our negotiations, will have to include and be justified by one of 10 reasons which we've covered in a separate video. If you are prepared to give a discount for less than the asking price of £1, that might well go as little as 90 pence, you have to justify that discount or that reduced price. But this is not something we're going to talk about in the opening price, because we're going to hold that back. Equally, it's very important when you're quoting your price that you do not use words like, "this is my very best price." You must not say, "this is my lowest price," because if you're later seen to agree to a sum less than that, you'll be deemed unreliable. And the prospect and the buyer begin to wonder, well, what is the right price, having already misled them. So it's important that when you quote your price, you can use words like competitive, or you can say this is the price. You can justify it by talking about the margin your company hopes to make, but you mustn't say it's your lowest price when in fact it's not. We now move on to scenario number 2, which is when your opening price is challenged. And you should be prepared and ready for the buyer to come up with something like, your price is off the radar. It's unrealistic. It's outrageous. It's unbelievable. It's never going to happen. And whatever they say, you should be clear in your mind that while you might have quoted £1 for your product or service, and that you may well be prepared to accept as little as 90 pence, this is no time to offer reduction. This is no time. You must now uphold your price. This is no time to submit just because they don't like the price. When you will submit and reduce your price somewhere between £1 and 90 pence, it will be because you can justify it by any one of the 10 reasons quoted in our previous video. So it's important at this stage that whilst the buyer has every right to rant and rave about not liking your price, that's not a good enough reason to reduce it, and you mustn't attempt to reduce it at this stage. So you should stick to your guns by saying, "Mr. Buyer, would you be kind enough to explain to me, what do you have in mind?" And when you say what do you have in mind, keep it simple at this stage, and do not just say how much do you have in mind, because that you're focusing too much on the price. It quite well be the circumstances that they have in mind. It's possible that they may well be thinking of buying 100 times more in volume in terms of product or service from you than you had in mind, which could well influence your thinking. So it's best at this stage to keep it open by saying, Mr. Prospect, what you're saying is the price is outrageous. Would you be good enough to tell me what do you have in mind? And stick to your guns and get the initiative to come from them. Because whilst there may well be 10 reasons why you can reduce it, it's best if these circumstances and reasons come from the buyer. And you must work very hard at getting the buyer to try and influence you and get you to reduce the price rather than the other way around. So you must do everything you can to do that. And you might say things like, Mr. Prospect, Mr. Buyer, you've been a customer of ours for a long time. We'd hate to fall out with you at this stage because we value your business a great deal. Now, would you be kind enough to tell me, what do you have in mind? Or, Mr. Prospect, we've never done business before, but we have identified you as somebody we've been keen to do business with for a long time. And we would hate to fall out at this stage. Would you be good enough to tell me, what do you have in mind? And stick to your guns and get the prospect to work at trying to give you an opening price that they're willing to go for. Because you see, it's a good idea at this stage that if the prospect came back and said, I was thinking of 40 pence, then there wouldn't have been any point in you offering a discount between £1.90, because what they have in mind for your product or service is presumably totally different from what you have in mind. Equally, if they said 95 pence, you'd have a better idea of where you can go. So it's best that the initiative comes from the buyer. But for a start, you must uphold your price and not submit at this stage. So now let's move on to scenario number 3, when your lowest and best possible price, and see what happens here. We're now moving to scenario 3 and a critical stage in negotiations when you're on the verge of quoting your lowest and best possible price. This is an area where salespeople fall down time after time because it's so critical they get it wrong. It's important at this stage that, let's say in the negotiations you have got to the point where you're now on the verge of disclosing your lowest and best possible price. End of the line, no ploy, it's a walkaway price that you're about to quote. It's 90p, so you can't go any lower. It's important that whilst you might have been negotiating for a significant amount of time and getting your price from £1.10, which then attracted a loyalty discount, to a number of other discounts along the way, which have been justified with reasons, and you're now about to quote your 90p price. And if you say, my best possible price is 90p, can you see what's likely to happen? There's a danger that he's not going to believe you. There's a danger they're going to think there's more. Why? Because you've already dropped your price from £1.10 to £1, and from somewhere between £1 made its way down to 90p. And you just said, now my best price is 90p. But the buyer is quite likely to assume that if you already dropped it once or twice, or goodness knows, maybe 3 times, that there's more there. So it's important before you quote this price that you set the scene correctly for what it is. And you say, Mr. Prospect, I realize we've come to a very critical stage in the negotiations where your company or my company may well have to walk away, which would be a shame because we've reached the end of the line. I've gone back to my company and asked my sales director for the best possible price which they've come up with. And they've gone back to the financial director and the managing director, and they've sat around the table with sharp pencils because I've told them that if we don't come up with the right price, that you'll walk away. And that'll be the end of the line. So I've encouraged them to come up with the best possible price, and they've done just that. So you should be clear, Mr. Buyer, that whilst we have negotiated well, I do believe we've taken everything possible into account, that the price I'm going to quote right now is our last and final price. And I have to respect the fact that if it's not good enough for your company, I respect that, and I hope we can stay friends. But what I have to tell you, this is not a ploy. This is not a tactic. This is not a strategy. This is our very best and lowest price, which is 90p. And I hope, Mr. Prospect, that we're going to leave it with you for up to 48 hours. I hope, I'd be delighted if you are able to accept it. If you're not, I will respect that. But there is no point in coming back to me asking me if I can reduce it further, because I'll be seen to have been a liar and unreliable. Because I'm telling you now, this is the last and bottom line lowest price. So if I can leave it with you, Mr. Prospect, and I hope to goodness that you can justify and see the value of the product and service as outlined, that it is worth every penny of the 90p price we've just quoted. We now get to a situation where we're looking at scenario number 4, where we want to match the prospect's or the buyer's reduced offer. I say we want to match it. So it sounds simple, it sounds straightforward. The buyer makes an offer that's acceptable to us and we want to accept it. Surely if we just shake hands, we can all be friends. But it's not as simple as that, because this is when it goes wrong so many times. So we got a scenario where we've asked for £1.10, we've offered the discount for loyalty, and we were prepared to accept somewhere between £1 and 90p, depending on certain circumstances. And the buyer comes in with an offer that in that range, and we're happy to accept it. Well, it's important we're not seen to take their hand off immediately. While it's internally we're happy to do that, we mustn't be seen to do that, because that's when it all goes wrong. So as soon as this buyer suggests this price, and let's say they offer 90p, we must not be seen to take their hand off immediately, even though that's what we want to do. Because if we do, and whilst we go home celebrating that we've reached a deal that's satisfactory, the buyer on the way home will start to reflect on how did we get to that price that they were happy with. And they will reflect and think at the price, where did the price come from? It came from the buyer and not the seller. So the buyer is going to start to think, oh my goodness, maybe I got it wrong, because we went from £1.10 down to £1 and maybe a couple of steps in between, and then they suggested 90p and we took their hand off, and the buyer is thinking maybe they would have got it for 89 or 85 or 80 or 70. So they will come back sometimes and say, Mr. Seller, I've been thinking. I know we shook hands and agreed the deal, but I've been thinking, and I'm wondering, is it possible that you can shave some more off this price? And this is where it all goes wrong. So it's important to avoid the situation that when the buyer makes an offer that was acceptable to us, that we're seen to continue to look for a condition or a circumstance or a reason that would enable us to justify this reduced price. And you'll find in the 12 reasons that we've listed separately that there are 3 that are non-contentious reasons, which could be something as simple as, Mr. Prospect, I would hate to fall out with you at this stage, and we've been negotiating well, and I would love to be able to accept your price, but the only basis that we could accept it, that there has to be a condition, is that if you be good enough to, and you give one of the 10 reasons previously mentioned, which could well be that your company agrees to give a testimonial. It could well be that your company agrees to complete a customer survey, but you must put some condition there. And that when you subsequently write to that customer, confirming the deal, that you put that in writing to say, Mr. Prospect, I'm pleased we reached a deal, conditional upon you doing whatever it is we agreed. So it's very important when you want to accept a reduced offer that you're not seen to take their hand off too quickly, and that there's a condition. There's a reason for enable you to justify it, and to also to enable the customer and the prospect to realize that is the end of the road. It is quite clear from this video that successful negotiation demands that if the seller is willing to reduce their price, that this reduction must be justified. To learn more about this justification, please keep tuned to this channel. In the meantime, give us a like, let us have your thoughts and comments below, and to join our community, just hit the subscribe button to be notified of future videos from this Sharper Business channel. And thank you for viewing.